Hello and welcome. I'm Anti-Derivative Jill, and this is Indefinite Lunch in Infinite Combinations, number 31. And today I'm joined with Pop Culture Curator and Scotty R37 to review the next episode in production order, The Naked Time. So, hey, how are you guys doing today?
Great, thank you. Good to see everybody. I am very excited about this episode. Good to see you, Jill, and good to see you, Scotty.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, I'm jazzed too. How was my echo?
Much better. I'm
Good,
glad you
good.
restarted. You sound great now.
Yep, loud
Perfect.
and clear.
And I'd like to make sure everybody's subscribed to Pop Culture Curator and um, because we also have an animated series review show that we do on his channel on Mondays at 8 p.m.
Thank you, Jill.
Mm, yeah. And so next week we're going to be discussing the animated series episode, The Magics of Megasuit. Um, um, I guess I'll figure out how to pronounce that. Megasuit? Megas. And also remember to subscribe to the Fantasmagorium show by Scotty R37 and his friends. And right now they're working through the magic of Tarantino, and tomorrow they'll be reviewing Kill Bill Volume 2, which should be really, really fun.
Yep, yep.
And for reference to the production of these episodes, the facts that I share come from the Star Trek 365 original series book by Paula M. Block and Terry J. Erdman. And the idea to use this text comes from Marion Briggs, who's link. I'll put a link to her science fiction short stories in the chat when I get a chance. But also, my panelists are free to use other sources that they will, of which they will cite their where they get their sources from other stuff that we want to talk about today. And I understand that Pop Culture Curator actually does have something he wants to share before we get started with the episode.
Yes, it's just a little information here. This is from Inside Star Trek, The Real Story by Herb Solo and Robert Justman. And this is what I'm going to cover here is the inception of the cage when Gene Roddenberry gave it to them. It says the pilot story NBC chose was named The Cage, and after we spent many hours straightening out the
Mm-hmm.
twists, turns, and bends in the plot, Gene began to write the script. In some way, he found the process easier than writing other pilot scripts. The little person who sits on a writer's shoulder demanding reality in real life was conspicuous by its absence. Gene had no reality to write, only fantasy with a dose of nonfiction.
Wait a minute.
Non
No reality to write from. That's why he became a police officer.
I,
He was in the
but he's
military.
writing right, but he's not writing about cops right now. He's writing about outer space, I guess. I don't know. Gene had no reality to write, only fantasy with a dose of non-science science fiction to boot. The reality came when the script was finished. The reality of money. Easy for Gene to hinge a scene on a laser cannon, tough to go down to the local hardware store or gun shop and buy one. But like the old joke about selling sardines but never eating them, the network draft wasn't for shooting. The network draft was for selling. When we got the order for the pilot film, then we'd face the budget problem head on. Sure, we would. As Gene completed the first draft pilot script, he unfortunately became overly protective of his new baby. He began to establish scapegoats, failing to recognize that others had not only emotional interest in the project, but moneyed interest as well. Embassy program, embassy standards and practices, the censors, and the Desilu production department were destined to become his three leading scapegoats.
Oh wait, who wrote this particular memo or explanation? Um,
Uh,
this
Herb Solo,
Herb Solo. Okay, thank you.
no problem. As Gene completed the, where did I leave off? He began to establish, uh, okay, they began become his three leading scapegoats. Sorry, I had to go back a couple pages.
Oh, that's
I,
okay.
caution, I cautioned Gene that having good reason at times was no excuse to continually cast blame, especially when dealing with people who had a lot to do with the future of the series and his ultimate survival. He didn't listen, he didn't want to. And as series
Mhm.
development progressed, his behavior foreshadowed a continuing rocky future for Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek. This is why I wanted to cover this. This kind of came to light later on in the movies and in Next Generation, I think.
And this is from the Making of Star Trek book.
Inside Star Trek: The
Oh,
Real
inside
Story.
Star Trek. Okay. Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
As series development progressed, his behavior foreshadowed a continuing rocky future for Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek. Though I ran interference for him with Desilu Management and its production department, NBC was a different story. It helped no one to get involved in a very personal war, but Gene couldn't resist tilting at windmills. Gene and I met with NBC to get their script comments. He took offense at
This
most
is
of
a little
them.
rude.
What's that?
Oh, nothing. Nothing. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. He
Is this
took
kind of
offense.
like is this kind of like looking behind the curtain on the Wizard of Oz for you?
No, go ahead. Continue, please.
He took offense at most. Okay, Gene and I met with NBC to get their script comments. He took offense at most of them, at times unnecessarily so. Some ideas were really good, and a new side of Gene slowly appeared: ownership of ideas. If a good story or series point came from anyone, be it NBC, Ashley Famous, or Desilu, Gene Roddenberry appropriated it. This subtle, these are all my ideas syndrome would eventually affect Gene's relationships with many who worked on Star Trek: writers, composers, actors, agents, story editors, art directors, producers, and me. A few years later, Bob Justman coined a name for him: the Great Bird of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
As Gene continued to absorb ideas and concepts from others, I would jokingly tell Gene that he was really the great blotter of the galaxy. It seemed more appropriate. Bob,
Oh, jeez.
this is involvement, by the way, about Lucille Ball's involvement with the inception of the series. Bob Justman, probably because this is Bob speaking, probably because she never interfered with his show, Gene always had kind words to say about Lucille Ball. Nonetheless, there was and has been a lot of speculation as to Lucy's involvement in the development of Star Trek. Herb Solo. Several incidents should set the record straight. First, although I wasn't a member of the Desilu Board of Directors, I was called upon to make appearances at board meetings to report on and update our series development status, network deals, important casting choices we'd made, and the like. Lucy rarely asked questions about the meeting, content to listen to her executives discuss the state of her company. Surprisingly, at one particular meeting, as I was about to begin my presentation, Lucy interrupted me. Herb, Lucy, I said. Herb, what's happening with that South Seas series? The what? You know, Herb, the South Seas series you mentioned last time. South Sea series. Gee, Lucy, I wish I could remember, but I don't recall any South Sea series. Are you sure? Herb, Lucy interrupted, a slight anger sounding in her tone. Of course, you talked about a South Sea series with the USO entertainers who went there during the war to visit the troops. I looked around the room. The faces of the board members weren't happy. Mickey Rudin, Lucy's attorney, and my support system at Desilu silently indicated for me to answer her question. I tried to be calm as Lucy was getting more and more upset. Lucy, perhaps it's something I've forgotten, but for the life of me, I do not recall ever mentioning a series where we have in development about a group of USO entertainers visiting our troops in the South Seas during World War II. Oh, yes, you did, said a now defiant Lucy. Oh, yes, you did. I stood speechless, trying to remember what I had obviously forgotten, when Lucy, having remembered more information on the subject, suddenly blurted out, "Oh, yes, you did, Herb. You called it Star Trek."
Yeah,
So,
so she had a misunderstanding thinking that
right,
Star
but
was referring to celebrities.
yes, and I'm not going to go into more detail. There's like 2 pages on it, but
Hmm.
basically, right, they basically told her, "No, here's what it is," and she did still green light the show. So I know
Yes.
some people, yeah, there's a lot of people who think that she green lit Star Trek knowing that it was about space and all this, and
No,
that's not quite the truth.
right.
Thank you, Jill. That's all
You're
I needed
welcome.
to share. Appreciate it, everybody.
Phew.
And
All
hello,
right.
Bird in the chat, Mega Cropper, and a few others I see
Yes,
coming in. Ed
absolutely. Hello to Mega Cropper, JPRPH1, and LDG is also said hi here, and
Yay.
Bird of Prey 5,
Edge of Time is here. Huzzah and ahoy.
of course. Great to see you guys. And Mega Cropper's getting a link to a live stream that Bird of Prey 5 did about what we left behind. So
Cool.
you can, yeah, because Bird of Prey 5 has these really great commentaries that you can sync up to Star Trek Deep Space, all of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, including the documentary. It's probably one I should listen to because, as I understand it, Scotty was there.
I think he's done with DS9, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay.
So he's going to start Enterprise next. But anyway, we've got an episode here today. It's called The Naked Time. And this episode first aired on September 29th, 1966. It was written by John D.F. Black and directed by Mark Daniels. And hey, he just directed the last episode too. And so I gotta get my slides going here.
So I have a question. Is Brew going to cover Voyager? Was that before or after Enterprise?
I don't know.
Okay.
You're gonna have to ask him.
Okay, but was it before or after Enterprise?
It was before.
Yeah, Voyager aired before Enterprise.
Okay, so in order, it was TNG, and then DS9, right?
Yes.
And then Voyager, and then Enterprise. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. That's the only question I had.
Yeah, he's going by what he wants to watch.
Which is absolutely fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll start with the captain's log. This is a weird one because we don't get the star date, but I have reference to know that it is star date 1704.2, according to the website I use to look at the transcripts for these episodes.
And that does sound about right because they will show it here in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's right. They do show it in the chronometer at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the first captain's log. Our position orbiting Psi 2000, an ancient world, now a frozen wasteland, about to rip apart in its death throes. Our mission to pick up a scientific party below, observe the disintegration of the planet. And as it mentions later in this episode, this planet is such a wasteland because its stars darkened. So I assume that's referring to when the star has exhausted its ability to generate fusion power. Only the very big stars go supernova. Most smaller stars, including our own, will get hotter and bloat out into a red giant, and then will collapse and do that in a bit of a cycle until it's finished. And when it's done using up all of its power, it just dies out to possibly a red a dwarf or
Brown dwarf?
yeah, some kind of dwarf. Yep.
I wish I knew the life cycles of stars. I failed you.
No, that's okay. I only wanted to touch on that briefly.
Fair enough.
I wish I knew it more myself.
Well, doesn't the life cycle isn't it flexible depending on the size of the star?
That's right. A bigger star will go supernova. So the bigger it is, the more dramatic.
Yeah, and longer. I think it lasts maybe.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So anyway, Spock and
Joe. I didn't catch his last name, but yeah.
I did because it's in the transcript.
Okay.
Tormalin. But Joe.
Yes, they do mention it in the episode.
Yes, Joe. And they're the only landing party crew on the planet who are sent to pick up the science team that were left on the world. And I love this strange device that they use, kind of like a tricorder, but they don't really talk about it, but it's the same device that Scotty uses in The Enemy Within.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. Yes, when they were scanning that magnetic material that came from the planet.
They find 6 people dead on the station. 1 was strangled. Another left at his post uncaring.
And that woman they just showed was clearly, obviously, a mannequin.
Mm-hmm.
And yet another was in the shower with his clothes on. And we get our comedy of errors from Mr. Tomalin.
There we go. Yes, of course. Can we see what's wrong with this picture, people?
Mm-hmm.
Not only does he take off his glove to scratch his nose, but he keeps his glove off so he can give the console a good rub down.
Well, it's not just that, but they're showing that hood is completely open to the environment. He just sticks his hand right up inside the hood and rubs his face and smells his finger.
Yes, but this was,
Smells his finger.
and that would be a problem if the pathogen were airborne, but it's just liquid based. So had he just, kept his glove on and not
Oh
rubbed
yeah,
on and touched everything,
but you think that the suit would be
he would have been
airtight, right?
okay. Yeah, that would make sense. That would make more sense.
I mean,
But
even now the suits we have for hazards are airtight, the hazmat suits.
fair enough. Mm.
But they had to show him contacting his hand just to give the effect. So I think for dramatic purposes, that's why they
Yeah.
showed him sticking his
I,
hand in his foot.
yeah, I want to call him an idiot, but then again, my nose has been itchy before and it could be really aggravating.
Well, the first thing you do is, as instinctively, you reach up and scratch, right?
Right, right, right. And did I get a picture of the goo? Yeah, I did. I got a picture of this goo jumping straight onto his hand. So, guess it's attracted to warmth somehow.
I was wondering about that. So you think it's attracted to his body heat? It's not sentient, correct?
Yeah, it's not sentient, but it somehow is. I think it's. I'm just guessing. I don't think this is ever brought up during the episode that it's attracted to heat.
Right. But see, right there, he's sticking his hand right up in his hood, which means he might as well take the hood off. It's not really serving any purpose.
Mhm.
I like
Well,
that said, by the way. And this is one of the rare occasions you'll see doors that open without sliding open, right?
well, it does it does prevent. Well, it's supposed to. It's supposed to deter you from touching your face, but I guess it didn't work.
You think it would, a minimum, maybe have a zipper where you have to open the zipper to touch your face.
Hmm. Yeah, that would make sense. Oh, and before he put the glove back on, he did scratch his nose just one more time, just for good measure. And we get our second captain's log. Captain's log, stardate 1704.2. The science party we were to have picked up has been found dead. Life support systems have been turned off. Station personnel frozen to death. Conditions highly unusual. Meanwhile, we remain in orbit to complete our mission. Close scientific measurement of the breakup of this planet. I appreciate Spock is very thorough in making sure that they're decontaminated when they're in the transporter room. However, the external decontamination is useless because Joe has been touching his face when he's been rubbing his nose, so the pathogen already got into his system.
I still wish we had hospital beds like this. That's still better than what we have now.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yes, you can be free when you're ready. You just tilt it over yourself and walk away.
Exactly. And especially for older and handicapped people, you think it would be easier to get them on the bed.
Mm-hmm. They have Dr. McCoy look them over, and he says they're all right. And this is a lovely Spock and McCoy moment here. Your
All his
pulse is,
vital signs, right?
yeah, all his vital signs are way off base of what they would be for a human, and Spock
Right.
says,
Basically, for us, we'd be dead if we had the same vital signs, right?
"Okay, yeah." Spock says the readings are perfectly normal for me, Doctor. Thank you. As for my anatomy being different from yours, I am delighted.
Well, and a brilliant piece of eyebrow acting from Leonard Nimoy here.
Yeah.
He's very emotive with his brow.
And Tourmaline is the first to be infected, and we get visual cues of how the disease spreads and how the victim becomes obsessed with rubbing themselves. Joe is rubbing his hands and arms, and
I
he
think
begins.
there's. I think they're establishing that his hand is itching.
Mhm,
I could
okay.
be wrong.
And he begins the character arc of having direct trauma at seeing the death of the people on the station. And this actually doesn't disturb Kirk at all. He's seen people be disturbed by death, so he just recommends some rest.
Right.
And, and then let me check out the chat here. It seems to be quite active.
Oh, it is jumping.
It is. And so, yeah, Bird of Prey shared his commentary for the Deep Space Nine documentary. And he tells his viewers here, Bird of Prey 5 says, live streams are listed only in their playlists on my channel. Sorry for the confusion. Oh, that's good to know where your live streams are on your playlists. Yeah, because then they can crowd up the uploads, the videos. That makes sense. If I had actual content that I edited, I would do the same thing. And Yama's Queen Jess is here. Hello.
Ahoy.
I believe that this is the first visit of Yama's Queen Jess to my channel.
Oh, welcome. Very cool.
And Mega Cropper says, Enterprise is the second best Trek. Sorry, OG fans.
Okay.
Oh, wait. He said, sorry, third best. He forgot about TNG. Okay. That's great. And Yama's Queen Jess informs us dead stars are called black dwarfs. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
And Fractured Vision is here also. Great to see you here. So much for landing party training. Yeah, don't touch your face when you're in the PCP. What do you call it?
Personal protective PPV?
PPE. Thank you.
PPE, personal protective equipment.
Yes.
Yeah. What's the point of putting all that stuff on if you're just going to take it off once you land?
And Blackfield Ballard is here. He says, the naked time? Now it's a party.
It's true.
And John Rendell is also here. Hello there, folks. Happy Tuesday. Hey, John Rendell. And Mayor McCheese is here. Great. Mayor McCheese, also known as Matt G.
Oh, hey.
Cool.
He reminds you to hit the like.
Hey, Gorilla.
Hello, Gorilla. Good to see
Gorilla's
you.
Random Thoughts. And Gorilla's Random Thoughts says, fact check. The bigger the star, the faster it burns out, not lasts longer.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
You know, come for the spaceship adventure and stay for the science. That's what I like about it.
Well, no, that's what I'm here for. Well, part of why I love Star Trek is because of the references to realistic science.
Right, and you get all these views from all these different people. It's great. Mm-hmm. We always walk out knowing a lot more than we walked in.
Right. Where I'm deficient, the chat helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The Naked Time was the first TOS episode I ever saw. Oh, that's an incredible first episode. So we continue here in the episode in the conference room, where we have Kirk, Rand, Spock, McCoy, and Scotty. And they observe the tapes from the station where the crew appeared drugged and apathetic. But McCoy notes right away that the bioanalysis says there were no drugs. Not knowing any coming danger, Kirk orders a tight orbit so they could get the best possible measurements from the planet as it breaks up. And Spock notes that they can't just maintain the orbit passively. As it breaks up, the planet will change its gravity, mass, and magnetic field, which will have to be compensated for to maintain the orbit. So then we head to the rec room.
And it looks like she's losing by the looks on her face.
Yeah, the 3D chess set always gets all the attention. But we see a couple of crewmen playing 3D checkers.
Yes.
And also, we get to see the food processor. We don't exactly have replicators just yet.
And a puff of cigarette smoke.
Oh, yeah.
You're right.
When the door opened, it's to represent steam coming from the food, but there would be no steam because it has the dome on it. So somebody just blew a puff of cigarette smoke from above down into the box, which is fine.
So, but that means every time they get food, that somebody has to smoke a cigarette.
Yes. We need a cook that smokes.
And and Joe's getting more intense here, looking at his hands, helping inform the audience that something is very wrong with him.
Plus
This just
the sound effect they play.
yeah, the little yeah,
It's almost like a metallic rattlesnake. It
Well,
sounds really
we need
cool.
a musician. They can tell us what instrument
hmm
it is.
like a maraca maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Possibly similar to
or
like
a
a maraca.
rain stick. You know those little sticks that you turn around and it goes.
Oh, possibly.
Hmm.
But I always equate that sound with this particular episode and this effect.
Oh yeah.
Yes, if somebody knows, that's new. Meanwhile, Sulu and Riley are discussing rapier sword, a thin sword.
Now, this is where we are introduced to Riley, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he's the navigator for this episode. Meanwhile, Tourmaline is continuing to bug out, verbally attacking Sulu and Riley, raving that people don't belong in space and that he doesn't belong. And he gets more and more aggressive about this.
Well, let me ask a question. This effect that it has on people is supposed to bring out their inner emotions and what they believe, or and they're suppressing. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, because he says to Sulu, "You don't like me," and I thought that's odd.
Well,
Maybe it's just insecurities.
Spock
Go
later
ahead.
says that he has self doubt, but it wasn't as bad as this. So
Not as bad as this, right?
all of that self doubt has come pouring out.
Right, that's way off the chart now. Yes.
hmm And he gets so aggressive about this that he decides that he needs to kill himself with a butter knife.
Well, first you notice that with the position it's in now, it's stay away from me position, but then he turns it in his hand to this, right? So his mood changes.
Yes, I would ask what kind of damage you could really do to yourself with a butter knife, but he succeeds uh, very successfully in stabbing himself in the stomach.
Maybe if you push hard enough, because it did show that he landed on it.
Yeah.
And of course, Sulu and Riley are trying to stop him.
Pink blood, probably because of the sensors.
Yes, that was my idea too. The pressure from the floor, smashing with the knife, is how that happened. You're right.
And you would think the other crew members would pitch in and help, but they're just enjoying the show. This is like a day at Waffle House,
Ha.
You're right. They're just sitting there watching.
right?
Maybe they just don't know know him as
right.
well.
Yeah, maybe they have no training.
Well, you know, they are playing 3D checkers, not chess.
That's true. They're concentrating here.
And we get our next log here, Captain's Log Supplemental. Our orbit is tightening, our need for efficiency critical, but unknown to us, a totally new and unusual disease has been brought aboard. And and of course, Sulu and Riley, from having tried to help Joe, are now infected. But yeah, let's see. And Riley is at navigation, compensating for the planet's shifting gravity so that the ship will stay in orbit. And Spock muses about their scanning and studying of the planet, but but Torm, but Riley's starting to rub around, looking at his hands, rubbing
I
his
think it's
hands.
itching.
Oh, you think it's itchy?
Yeah, they keep scratching their hands, so I'm guessing they're itching.
Mhm. And Spock says, obviously, this planet is condensing more rapidly than expected, a valuable study. We may be seeing Earth's distant future. Before its sun went dark, this planet was remarkably similar to yours. And it was that statement that had me looking up our sun dying and how it dies. But the orbit is fine for now. So they cut to McCoy and Chapel working on Tourmaline in sickbay. wondering how he could go from simple self-doubt to trying to kill himself, um, even though it makes no sense to McCoy that he's dying because that wound really wasn't that bad.
And I do enjoy the series of cones that McCoy uses to operate.
Me too, and
It
and
very thorough.
Chapel's efficiency at choosing the correct cone that he needs.
Yeah, it looks like the cones that bakers use when they're putting frosting on cake.
Oh yeah. And the
Look,
respirator not attached to anything. It's great.
and right, the respirator is not a big, huge machine they wheel into your room like it is now.
Yes, all of its machinery is in that little tube at the end there. That is future. Hmm. And try as he might, though, and even though the wound isn't that bad, he dies.
Jill, I have
Well,
a question for you. I was wondering if you noticed that Nurse Chapel's hair is gray in this episode. Wasn't it blonde in the previous one? Have you noticed?
That's right.
Because I'm wondering if they're trying to make her look older than what she is. I don't know. Because that's one thing that struck me when she came out on TNG, and I thought, well, TNG's like 20 years later, and she didn't look nearly that old. So I don't know. I thought that was odd. Her hair seems to be grayish black in this episode.
yeah, I noticed that about Nurse Chapel as well, and you see it again when we get to what her little girl's made of. She's almost got silver hair. I don't know if that's just sort of futuristic styling choices or what, but this would be the first of three hair colors for Nurse Chapel. She goes from silver to blonde, and then in the last episode, she is a brunette.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you. Grill's Random Thoughts has some things to say about this episode. He says Data can get laid when he doesn't get horny, but he can't. But Gorilla can't. Okay. Okay. And Gorilla says that dummy who scratched his nose is the perfect example of what I mentioned last night.
He's talking about the animated series review. Those in the chat that aren't sure what he means.
Oh, he says that okay, that the suits that we saw earlier were magnetically sealed instead of zippers. I didn't see that they were sealed, but I guess they
No,
were.
they weren't. They're not sealed. There's no magnet.
No, no, okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't see the magnet to myself. Fractured Vision says the sound is made by what is called a shaker. There are many sizes, many kinds, and easily handmade. I wonder if the shaker
Cool.
is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. That I call a rain
Thank you,
thingy.
Fracture Division.
A
Appreciate that.
shaker. Cool. And Gorella's Random Thoughts is right. It'd be easier with a steak knife than a butter knife.
Why a spoon, cousin? 'Cause it'll hurt more. Sorry, little Robin Hood Prince of Thieves for you.
Gorilla says you use a butter knife to torture someone. And Fractured Vision continues McCoy's cones are either salt shakers or lathe aluminum. Wow, thank you. John Rendell continues Star Trek computer consoles. So much masonite board. Love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some big questions when we get to engineering.
Mhm. And Spock is saying about the planet's breakup is imminent, Captain, shrinking in size at an increasing rate. As the planet continues to shrink in size, its surface moves away from us. So the work at navigation and helm are needed to they need to be more precise because the orbit keeps getting more complicated as it is changing.
I have a question. If the planet, I could be wrong. I could be completely off on this, but if the planet's shrinking, wouldn't the gravity be pulling them towards it?
Yes, that's exactly what's happening in this episode. You're completely correct.
Okay.
And
I think
Sulu,
either Sulu or Riley says it's like the planet just reached out and yanked us closer.
yes, especially since Sulu is starting to sweat profusely. And oh, okay, actually, I said already that Joe died, but this is actually where he dies.
Well, and it doesn't have the same. I've always enjoyed the heartbeat monitor in the bio beds in sick bay, but it doesn't offer the same sort of dramatic tension of hearing the heartbeat go beep 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 beep. It just sort of boom boom, and then it's over. But still, really cool. I really like the bio beds. Can't give enough love to the bio beds in sick bay.
Yep.
And in reference to them always rubbing their hands, I didn't get it as so much that they were itchy. I just thought that because this is when they comment that they're profusely sweating. And I always thought that it was just a reaction to their palms really sweating and trying to get whatever that feeling of moisture. Could be itchy, could be perspiration.
Definitely perspiration is happening. And maybe they're just trying to rub it off. Like, hey, if I rub this, maybe it'll stop sweating. But hey, I haven't stopped sweating yet, so maybe rub some more.
Mm-hmm.
Girla's random thought says he got extra ketchup with his nuggets. Yay. Okay.
Well, I think he was saying that he asked for
think,
extra, and she only gave him one extra.
Two. No. He got lots extra. He said this lady gave me 2 packets per nugget. He got lots
okay.
of extra ketchup.
Okay.
And this is this is very interesting to Mayor McCheese because he's very interested in Burger King and McDonald's and
Anything burger related.
anything fast food related. Giannis Queen Jess says, I think Sulu said that.
Well, no, I
Regarding
know.
the orbit.
Well, I knew about the orbit and I knew about the gravity, but the reason why I asked is because Spock said, and I don't know if you have the transcript or not, but I thought Spock said the planet is pulling away from us, and that's what kind of made me wonder. But I could be wrong. And that we have, I think he said that the planet's pulling away from us, and we need to compensate.
Yes, that's right.
But wouldn't
And
it be pulling them closer, not away from us? I don't
um,
know. That's where. Sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
wait, where was that? I'd have to check the transcript for the precise thing that you're talking about.
It was just
Um,
before this when Kirk and Spock were standing there, and Spock's describing to him what's going on, and the planet shrinking faster than they expected.
mhm.
And I thought I could be wrong, but I thought Spock said the planet is pulling away from us.
No. It says the surface is moving away from us. So the planet is moving away.
Right, but then wouldn't it be the opposite? Wouldn't it be pulling them towards it? But that's what.
But it's not referencing the pulling. It's not in reference to the gravity, it's in reference to the shrinking.
Right, but that means they're moving away from the planet. If the surface is
The
moving away
the
from them,
planet's moving away because it's getting smaller, but the gravity is slowly pulling the Enterprise in at the same time.
but wouldn't that mean the surface is becoming closer, not further away?
Well,
I don't know. Sorry. Go ahead. Continue. I don't want to confuse anybody.
Well,
no, that's what I'm saying.
I think when the planet is shrinking, but then because of the fluctuations in the gravimetric pull and the magnetic fields, as the planet is pulling away, the unstable gravimetrics are yanking the planet or
The
yanking
Enterprise.
the Enterprise closer. So I think it is pulling away, but then also with the fluctuations, it's pulling it closer. But
Maybe
that's
like a
just a
yo-yo
theory.
effect. Yeah, maybe like a yo-yo effect.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. Sure. And
Right,
I
because
also
we know like
understand.
the moon is in a tidal like the moon, for example, is in a tidal lock around the Earth, and that's why it stays at its current distance. But if the
Yes.
Earth's gravity is increased, it would pull the moon inwards. You would think, right? So that makes sense. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And Son of a Red Shirt says, hooray, naked time with Jill. Yep, it's the naked
Hello,
time.
son of a red shirt.
Hey, son of a red shirt. It is the naked time.
It is. Yes, absolutely. So the work at the navigation and the helm um, is becoming very unstable, not just because of the planet, but because of Sulu deciding to abandon his post so he can go to the gym, leaving Riley confused. Don't be a fool. But he's about to succumb to the illness himself. And here, McCoy is explaining to Captain Kirk that just gave up on life. It seemed because the wound wasn't that severe. That's the only explanation he can think of, and he can't quite make the connection uh, to the landing party visit
I have a
just yet.
question. I have a question. This relates back to turnabout. I always get the names mixed up. But the enemy within. When Kirk went down to McCoy's lab and demanded brandy, McCoy pulled it out of that cabinet behind him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that that is the only place on that ship you can find alcohol?
Scotty's quarters probably has a bottle or two.
So William Shatner or Captain Kirk picked that location. I don't know. You may continue. I thought because I started to realize is that the only location for alcohol? That didn't make sense because we've seen it in other parts and other episodes. But then why does William Shatner go all the way to sickbay to get the alcohol in that? But I should have mentioned that during that episode. Sorry, go ahead, Jill.
Because that's where the brandy was. That
Okay.
specific brandy. Well, McCoy's specific brandy that he had. There
Maybe
could
that's
be more
Captain Kirk's
alcohol.
favorite, right? Maybe there's more alcohol, but that's Captain Kirk's
Hmm.
favorite. He prefers that
Yes,
brandy, maybe.
perhaps. I imagine that there's probably some in the bowling alley too, but who knows?
That makes sense. This is the first mention of the bowling alley, which is nice.
Yeah, I was excited about that, even though it hasn't come up yet. And Son of Red Shirt says if I left out any Star Trek references to this live stream, I would have gotten more views. He's probably right.
If not flagged.
And he also says, "Hey guys, glad to see you. Sorry, I'm on the phone driving. Can't participate, but listening. Have a great show. Thank you so much." And Mega Cropper is going ahead and voting this episode a B minus. And we'll be giving our reviews at the end of our stream here. And McCoy says, "Oh yeah, McCoy was talking about how Charmeleon gave up on life and that he's doing everything possible to figure out this problem, but Kirk wants the impossible checked out too." And Mr. Spock finally realizes that Sulu is missing from the helm, and Riley turns into his drunken state here.
Yeah, I was going to get a clip of this, but I didn't. But Spock turns around, notices that Sulu's gone from his post, and Leonard Nimoy bumps that console, and you can actually see it move. So, oh well. But that could be possible, I guess, on a starship.
Thank you. Thank you for noticing those things. I'm sure, yeah,
Well,
that happened.
well, there was also a scene where there's a mic in the frame, but I didn't bother with that.
Like a
Mhm.
boom mic?
Yes.
Nice.
I didn't even notice that. Wow. I wonder if that's from the fact that it's been upgraded and you're seeing things that weren't ever meant to be seen on a
No, it's
tiny
just
TV.
no. I didn't spot that when I was a kid. But it's the scene where Spock walks into the briefing room and starts crying.
Oh.
Mhm.
Well,
I
that
love that
is,
scene.
yeah, that's an interesting, just in terms of the production quality. I can't wait to get there.
Yeah,
Well, it's
and
not
so
the only time. I've seen it in other episodes, so I'll point it out
mhm.
later on.
Oh,
Sure, sure.
cool. Yeah, that'd be great. And Riley says, "Have no fear. O'Reilly's here. One Irishman is worth 10,000 of you." And so Spock relieves him from his post. And so I love this because Uhura gets to take over the station. Did I? Oh yeah, I got that.
Yep,
So
yep.
we're
Okay.
assuming that whatever this stuff is, it only transfers by contact from person to person. Like for example, Uhura is now touching the buttons that Riley was just touching. You think she would catch it, right?
Yeah, you think she would have,
And the same
but
with the other guy there
it
with
doesn't.
Sulu, but I
It
guess
doesn't
not.
really seem. It doesn't really seem to afflict her.
No,
Uh,
nor the other guy. It only seems to be person to person contact.
yeah, I think that
Sorry,
could be it.
go ahead, Jill.
That's possible. But it's really cool to see her take navigation even for a little while.
Absolutely, and she won't crash the ship like somebody else.
No, she won't. And the ship is very much in danger of that. And as I watch O'Reilly prance around, I'm reminded of the men at the Star Trek convention in Starfleet uniform and very drunk. And I love when he blows the automatic door open and the factor that he portrays when he hits on Nurse Chapel, it's such a cringy performance, and it's just perfection.
Well, what I thought was funny, and which is quaint,
Hmm.
is when he walks in and he sees her from behind. You could tell she's on a microfiche. You can hear it, the slides changing inside of it, and I thought that was kind of funny.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, and I'm even uncomfortable from it, but I didn't notice that. That's neat. Eh. And this is, of course, how Chapel becomes infected. As you said, person to person contact is how this seems to be transferring, not through just touching doors or handles or whatever.
You know what? If it hadn't been for what we've been going through the last couple of years, I probably would never have thought of that. It's only because of what's going on with the the virus is why I started realizing it's about the heightened sense of touching surfaces.
Yeah, that's a good point. And she tries to redirect him, saying, I know he was a friend of yours, referring to Joe. This must be a terrible shock. And Riley says, You know what Joe's mistake was? He wasn't born an Irishman.
And she's like, "Huh? What?"
Also, sort of a precursor to Chekhov's national pride in Russia.
Yeah, very good point. And so he to enter, he blew the door open, and to leave, he waves his hands like they're magic.
Which is now how I'm going to use every automatic door for the rest of the week.
Yeah, we should do the sound effect whenever we go into the grocery store.
Oh, hold on a second.
Shh, shh. But yeah, we get Chapel with the first indications of being infected.
Yeah, but I was wondering when they were down that planet and it showed they had doors that were on hinges. Can you guys think of any other episodes where we've seen that?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I guess even with Mud's women for the, but that's not shipboard. That was on the settlement.
That's what I
The
mean. Even on settlements or locations, have they showed other doors that open on hinges? Except for, of course, when they went back to the '60s and they showed the naval base, of course they had doors and hinges.
right.
But I think most of the time they're usually doors that slide side to side. I don't know. I could be wrong.
True. True. But I think in Mud's Women, when they go down to the settlement, there is a door because there's some dramatic moments with the storm raging outside, and
Oh,
they
there
open
is.
the door,
Yes,
and it blows in.
yes, you're right. The door opens from the inside, right?
And here we
And
go,
Woohoo!
topless
there we go.
Sulu.
And
And
I
he
have a
looked
note.
really good.
I have a note here, George Takei at a convention. I actually saw him twice at conventions, and he said this story twice.
Nice.
Mhm.
When they first mentioned him shooting this scene, they wanted him to have a samurai sword because he's Japanese descent, and he
Right.
didn't like that. He said, "No, I think that's a little too racist." So it was George Takei's idea to have this type of sword,
Um,
a fencing sword, I
yes,
guess you would
yes,
call
yes. We get the magic here of Sulu and his fencing as decay practice. Yes, I'd heard about that too, how they wanted to use samurai, but he wanted this. So that his movements would be realistic. And it's funny when he pricks his finger, being taken surprised by this. And I also have something from the book I haven't read yet, so I'm reading this for the first time um, about this.
Well,
It
and
says,
oh,
oh,
sorry, go ahead.
no, what was that?
Well, I was just going to say it is sort of interesting with Sulu switching it over. Sorry, George Takei switching it over from being a samurai sword to being a fencing sword. It kind of
Hmm.
reminded me, and again, going over Deep Space Nine, when the episode If Wishes Were Horses, and they have Rumpelstiltskin there, that was originally supposed to be a leprechaun, and Colmini was like, can we not do Irish stereotypes, please? And they switched that out so it would be Rumpelstiltskin instead of a leprechaun instead of relying on
Mm.
old-fashioned prejudices, if you will.
stereotypes.
Well,
Stereotypes is the
where
word.
where were you during Saturday Star Trek? Wow, that would have been great
Well,
to
well,
know.
I have to ask. I haven't seen this episode that you speak of. So, what was he instead?
Rumpelstiltskin.
No, well, I know
Rumpelstiltskin.
who Rumpelstiltskin is, but I'm saying if he wasn't a dwarf or what was he then? What they used for an actor? I'm saying, what was he then?
Oh no, they had cast the actor, a little person, to be a leprechaun, and when Cole Meany got a hold of the script, he was like, "Can we not make this an Irish stereotype? Does it have to be a leprechaun?" And they were like, "Well, no, it doesn't have to be. What do you want it to be?" And he was like, "What about Rumpelstiltskin?" And that's how they sort of rewrote around it, because even in Irish folklore, leprechauns steal children too, so it was an easy rewrite. But
Okay, so it was still a little person, but he wasn't a leprechaun. Is that right?
yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. All right, thanks.
That's a great parallel. Thank you, Scotty. So, in the book about this, it says, ask an eager young actor whether he's good at something, from riding a horse to speaking French, and the actor typically will swear on a stack of Bibles that he's an expert. And then, of course, he'll immediately have to go out and actually become one.
Yes.
So it was for George Takei when screenwriter John D.F. Black asked the man who was normally shackled to the ship's helm, console, if he could fence. Takei swore that he could. Then he rushed over to Falcon Studios on Hollywood Boulevard to sign up for lessons. Takei's excitement over the scenes in The Naked Time that Black had written for Sulu was nearly overshadowed by his discovery that fencing instructor Ralph Faulkner had choreographed the famous fencing scene between Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone, and one of Takei's favorite
Rathbone.
childhood Rathbone.
Yes.
Ralph Faulkner had choreographed the famous fencing scene between Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone in one of Takei's favorite childhood movies, 1938's The Adventure of Robin Hood. In fact, Takei learned that Faulkner had doubled for Rathbone during the sequence. Following a few frenetic weeks of lessons, The Naked Time went before the cameras. On the first day of shooting, Takei was in his trailer eating a bowl of cereal when director Mark Daniels stepped in and asked the actor to take off his shirt. After a glance at Takei's bare torso, the director informed them that they'd film his fencing scenes shirtless. The actor didn't return to his cereal. Instead, he immediately hit the floor and spent any free time over the next 3 days doing push ups to pump up for his pectoral debut. But he had to already be in pretty good shape
He was. Yeah, he's
just
always
for
been a
three
health
days.
fanatic.
Yeah.
But that shows his devotion to the role, so I give him credit
Yeah,
for that.
that's pretty incredible. Look at that. Oh, only I can look at it, but I guess you can. It's just great. And that's what the book says.
Good.
And George Takei mentioned that too at the convention. He did love this scene.
It was quite good. And he does well. Fix his finger.
This was funny right here. When he pokes it, he even surprises himself.
Hmm. Yeah.
And two of the most emotive members of
Well,
Starfleet.
I was thinking the look on their faces, like, okay, what now?
And he's chasing them. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here and look at the chat for a bit, see what's going on.
Okay.
Like Crapper. Oh, and yeah, Miss Queen Jess gives a rating too. A. It's my second favorite episode after Amok Time.
Very
Wow,
cool.
second
Oh.
favorite episode. I don't know. This one's up there for me for sure. According to Franz Joseph's 1970s Star Trek technical manual, there's also an Olympic-sized swimming pool in the secondary hull,
I've
engineering
heard
hull.
that too. Yeah, I've heard that too.
Hmm.
Theater, movie theater, and other things too.
Mhm. Gorilla's Random Thoughts gives it a D minus because the closest we get to seeing someone naked is shirtless Sue.
Oh, Gorilla, sorry about that.
Well, see, but the naked is not literal. It's your emotions are naked, your
Right,
feelings are naked,
right.
you- your
All your inner things that you've tried to suppress, everything is exposed.
everything about you is out there. Things that you hold back
Well, that
normally.
that reminds me of a question. If I remember right, TNG episode "The Naked Now," which I've only seen once, and that was the night it broadcast. I wasn't happy with it,
Me
but
neither.
maybe I'm wrong. But weren't they just acting like they were drunk?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all they did was acting like they were drunk. There was
That's
no
why I didn't like it.
nuance. There was no nuance to it as it being something that laid bare all of your innermost feelings.
Right, no variety to the characters. They all acted the same, and here they're
Well,
all acting differently.
and the problem with that episode was that it was only the second episode, and we didn't really know the characters very well. And this one is the seventh in broadcast order, so we already know a little bit about the characters in order to be able to differentiate their personalities from how they normally act to this.
Okay.
And
Agreed.
I definitely believe it should always be watched in broadcast order.
Well,
It's
right,
great.
but I
I
just
mean,
think
not broadcast. Sorry, I definitely believe that you should always watch this in production order.
no, but
Sorry.
I don't know. I keep thinking that even if it was the second episode of TNG, the writers could have written different content for each of the characters instead of having them all act the same.
Yeah, and they could have shown them being a bit normal at first and then
And,
descending into
well, and
something. But
actually show deep feelings that were,
mhm.
that they tried to. Everything it is right in this episode. Everything they tried to suppress is brought out in the open. I just didn't. I didn't see any of that. And I don't think it's because it was the second episode of TNG. I think it was just bad writing. I think they just said, "Oh, the Naked Time was a good episode. Let's do that, but let's not bother writing each character differently because we don't know how to write the characters yet."
It, that's what I'm saying. I say it is because it's the second episode because they didn't know how to write the characters because they didn't know the characters themselves. How could they have a character study of an episode with
No, I
characters
agree,
they don't
but
really
that's why you're
understand? The
right.
writers don't understand.
No, I understand the
And so
position, but
and
as
so
a writer, they
but you're right. It's bad writing because they didn't access the Bible.
well,
Because
no, but
Gene already wrote a Bible about detailing the characters of the episode, the characters on the show, so they could have used that
well, and
to
I was if it, I don't know, it's
write
just
this episode.
right, but it reminds me like current day what I've been hearing about She-Hulk, where if you
Hmm.
have writers that say we don't know the characters yet, I would say you're a writer. Come up with ideas. That's why you're a writer.
And read the Bible that Gene already wrote. He already wrote what the
Even that,
characters
right?
were.
But
So the work was done. The writers of the episode just didn't use it.
Well, and
possibly.
also when it comes to when you have an episode like this where there's sort of a subversion of the base characteristics of these people, unless the audience knows who they are, they can't really tell that they're acting all that differently. Famously in The Naked Now, Gates McFadden auditioned with a piece from The Naked Now. And so she thought that the character was going to be comic relief throughout the series. And when she found out it was a much more serious character, it's like, well, that was a weird episode to make me do my audition from. So it is a little bit of a missed opportunity, or maybe too quick at that sort of tearing away of the walls around each character.
Yeah, but I mean, like I agree completely, Scotty. But I also agree with pop culture that it was just bad writing because it was very
Yeah.
unoriginal and awkward and just weird.
well, I could be wrong, but weren't a lot of the first season episodes of TNG based on the Star Trek reboot?
Oh, yeah, that it was based on the Star Trek Phase 2 series that
Right.
was
So
supposed to happen.
So I'm wondering if that Naked Now was supposed to be written for Phase Two, and was supposed to be a continuation of this episode for the original characters. I don't know
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. But
because if it is, it wouldn't make sense.
let
So
since we're distracted already, I'm gonna go to the chat here.
go ahead.
Yama's Queen just says she gets infected, and I guess it's not exclusive to humans, considering who she infects.
Yes.
Is even the Doctor?
Right, right, because she
Nurse
infects
Chapel.
Spock,
Yes.
Oh,
who
Nurse
is
Chapel.
part Vulcan, part human.
Well, and with Spock, I noticed that I don't know if that whatever this I don't know if it's called a disease or a virus or whatever, but it seemed to activate on Spock a lot faster than it did the other crew members. I mean, he almost immediately turned.
Yeah, I think it's because we'll get in. I wanted to get into it
Okay,
later, but
go ahead.
because the Vulcans have stronger emotions,
Or more suppressed, right?
suppressed and stronger. Yes.
That's
Fractured
true.
Fractured Vision says they asked George if he knew how to fence. He didn't, but he said yes. He took lessons for 2 weeks to prep for the episode. Yep. Girl. Okay.
No, I was drooling over it. That is pure envy. I wish I had George Takei's physique from 1950s or 1966.
Yeah, he looked very good. He looked great. Yeah, I know that they're just like, take off your shirt. He's like, okay, you're going shirtless. So there you go.
I can't remember the last time someone asked me to take off my shirt.
Herc
Well,
130. So,
it's a good thing they didn't wait till the cameras were rolling to tell him to take off his shirt and let's see what you look like, right?
Yeah,
what what do people even have to ask you anyway? Herc
well,
130.
they're
now you have
actually. They just
you
say,
have
Scott, put on a shirt. Put on a shirt.
well, now you have actors that say, "Why are you gonna critique me because and shame me because I'm body positive or there's so many things that would be seem wrong these
Mhm.
days."
Yeah. Hello in the chat to Herc 130.
Hey, Herc.
And oh wait, where am I?
Oh my.
Hello, Hurt, Dave G. Sound, yeah, Miss Queen, Jess.
And so, realizing the issue with the disease, Kirk orders Sulu and Riley confined.
Well, did you?
Not that they're
Did,
successful at it, but they order it.
it was funny because that last clip. Did you notice that he's heading to environmental engineering? I'm thinking, okay, he's crazy. Why is he heading there? But I guess
Hmm.
he wants to wreak havoc there. Okay, so that's fine.
Hmm. Yeah, right. But fortunately, he heads to the bridge.
Well, remember on the planet, somebody had turned off the environmental engineering.
That's true. That's a good point.
Hmm.
That's what I thought. I thought he was going up there to sabotage it, but they don't really. I guess he's going to the bridge instead.
Hmm.
This is Sulu's, I don't know, mutiny, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, but before that, Spock marvels at the entire situation. Before Sulu hits the bridge, he says, "Fascinated. A pattern is developing because Uhura is reporting about the fight and Sulu chasing people with the sword." Spock says, "First Tourmaline, hidden personality traits being forced to the surface. Then Riley, who fancies himself a descendant of Irish kings, and now Sulu, who is at heart a swashbuckler out of your 18th century." And
Yeah, I
meanwhile,
don't know where that came from.
they start having dangerous issues with the orbit. The gravity pull is increasing and stabilization isn't working. They can't even warp because the engines won't respond, not even impulse. And right in the middle of this absolute terror, that's when we get Sulu um, on the bridge.
And her saying, "I ain't having none of that."
Yeah, right. And that's one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite lines from her. Sulu's under some kind of delusion and play acting that he's fighting for the Queen in France, and he holds on to Ahura, stating, "I'll protect you, fair maiden." And Ahura says, "Sorry, neither."
Which I thought was cute. Apparently, it's one
Uh,
of Nichelle Nichols. It was one of Nichelle Nichols' favorite lines as well.
yeah, because of course our gorgeous Ahura is neither a maiden nor is she fair, and so I'm so happy that they let that through because it's so funny and true.
Hmm.
And Ahura escaping Sulu allows enough distraction so that Spock can give him the Vulcan neck pinch here.
Which would be the first contact between Kirk and Spock with the virus through shirtless Sulu, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, also I think as far as stunt wise, George did a good drop. He actually fell and landed on his back. Usually, when they give him the nerve pinch, they kind of lower them to the ground.
Hmm. Hmm. Then we find out why the engines won't respond. Riley has taken over engineering. Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. He's taken over the Enterprise and
I wanted to ask about that scene with Kirk standing by the turbo lift.
okay. Riley's taken over engineering, calling himself Captain Kevin Thomas Riley of the Starship Enterprise, and he demands extra ice cream from the crew before he begins his major theme song of the episode. And at this point, there's something in the book about this. He's got 2 pages about it. So
Wow.
I'm gonna read those two.
The lyrics.
Well, no,
I'm just kidding.
about
I'm just kidding.
about Bruce Hyde is the actor who plays this. So I'm going to read from the book about it. Bruce Hyde was 24 years old when he appeared in The Naked Time as Kevin Riley. Today, Hyde is a professor of acting at Minnesota University, with fond memories of those days in 1966. I had contact with Desilu Studios, Hyde says. I'd done a pilot for them, and they were paying me enough to keep me available in case the pilot got picked up. Part of the deal was that they could use me up to 2 or 3 times on whatever series Desilu had already had airing. They had 3 shows at the time. The Lucy show was ongoing, and Star Trek and Mission Impossible had just started. That's how I wound up on Star Trek. My family has never traced our genealogy back, and I don't even know that I'm actually Irish, so that had nothing to do with my part of getting Kevin
Well, of
Riley.
course.
But I was lucky. The Naked Time was a really good episode, one that everyone remembers. I got to sing and joke around, which was unusual for the series.
Yes, everybody definitely remembers Riley.
And in 1966, I was a theater actor and hadn't done much television, so I was somewhat ill at ease in the studio, recalls Bruce Hyde. When you're on stage and what you're doing is funny, people laugh. But on a TV soundstage, they're not supposed to. I remember doing all that stuff as Riley in engineering, staggering back and forth and singing Kathleen. What I was doing was supposed to be funny, but everyone was just quiet. That was difficult for me, so the director, Mark Daniels, started choking me kind of playfully, trying to get me to loosen up and make me comfortable on the set. He was kind of a father figure to me at the time because he directed a play that I had a lot of success with called The Girl in the Freudian Slip. First touring and then for a short time on Broadway. Mark was a really wonderful guy. I had this photo for years. It was a nice memento. Oh, and there's a. Oh, I don't have a way to show you this photo. Mm,
Behind the
Okay,
scenes.
yeah, it's a behind the scenes photo of Mark Daniels choking, choking Riley. Mm,
Well, he
See
did a
that?
good job.
Yeah, he
If
did.
you hadn't have told us, we wouldn't have known all that. That is an experience.
Mm-hmm.
I need to keep an eye out to see if he popped up in Mission Impossible. I have that show as well.
Yeah, I don't know if he did, but he only had to work on one of the series, and
I'll
this
look
was
up
the
his
one.
resume. What year was that book published you're reading from?
The book that I'm reading from was what year was it published?
Yeah, I'm curious about around when he said this. Is he still alive? I don't know how old that book is. I have it over on my shelf. I guess I could go look.
Um, it doesn't say.
That's okay, Jill. Never mind.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
That's
know.
all right. No problem.
Um, but actually, you're helping me out here because I wanna send myself this picture. Actually, I'm gonna
And
send you the picture
I
so
want
I
to
can
start
have it.
sharing pictures from this book that I have as well. Some of the designs that some
Okay.
of the people came with the costumes and the original shuttlecraft Galileo designs. There's
It's
pictures of that in this book. Some
it's
designs.
sideways. I gotta flip it. I want to show this picture from the book,
Go for it. We're in no hurry. Take your time.
and and so I'm sending it to you so I can show it on the screen here.
While you're doing that, I'm just curious about the console layout. Why is there a giant console with like 5 buttons?
Oh yeah, you did want to talk about that, didn't you?
That's the only thing that really bothers me about this particular thing. Is there's a lot of dead space on that particular console.
I I think what they did is I think they may have built that console for this episode because they were basically adding to the set as they were going, depending on the episodes.
Makes sense.
And then later on, they may have filled in a few more buttons if the camera really focused on that. Jill, are you sending that to me? And is it on Twitter? Or how are you doing this?
Yeah, I'm sending it to you on Twitter, but I'm trying to flip it and it's not flipping. Oh, there it goes. It flipped.
Yay.
Okay, but yeah. What's wrong with the console? What are you talking
Oh,
about?
I just find that there's a lot of dead space. There's only a couple of rocker buttons, one button up top with the comm station, the communication microphone. It just looked like there was you know, the ergonomics of the situation, they were lacking. They could have had more buttons or readouts or something.
There you go. There's Mark Daniels trying to loosen up Riley, the actor here, Bruce Hyde.
Well, and on a
And
related note, I remember hearing a story about Rodney Dangerfield on the set of Caddyshack. It was his first movie, and he had been used to doing stand up comedy, where you get an instant reaction from the people that you're performing towards. But on a movie set, because you have to be quiet, so you don't like screw up the takes. Everyone was really quiet, and he got really, really self conscious about it because he's like, "Am I doing it wrong? Am I not funny?" And then the director goes over and says, "No, no, no, no. We can't laugh, or else it'll screw up the take." And so I can understand that from a stage actor not getting a response from the crew or people around him. It's like, am I doing this wrong? I'm not getting any sort of response. So
Right,
this
because they're
kind of
used to the audience. Yeah.
exactly.
yeah, they're used to a studio audience, like a sitcom or something. But this is a serious sci-fi show,
Hmm.
even though everyone's acting silly. So, Gorilla's Random Thought says, um, her Scotty says, I'll refresh you. I don't know what Gorilla's saying. Okay, Fraction Vision says, cool how her can take over navigation with no problem. This is something that comes from submarine service. The crews are trained in all stations for redundancy.
Absolutely.
Agreed. And Mr. Brown Alliance says, evening all, evening Joe, evening Scotty. Hey, Mr. Brown Alliance, great to see you here.
Hello, Mr. Brown.
And
Ahoy.
Dalek,
Hello, hello, Alec.
Hey,
hey
Dalek.
Dalek, he's just here to listen. And Herc 130 says, originally Takei was going to have a samurai sword, but he refused, saying it was too stereotypical, and demanded to use the rapier epi. Asked if he knew how to fence, and he said yes. You know the rest of the story. And hello to Tiger Stripes, who wants to sing the song.
One more time.
Yes. The song that O'Reilly sings, I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen. Dave G Sound says, extra dessert. Wesley commanded that too. Yeah, they tried to make Wesley into Riley. That didn't work.
Hey, Tony Stark. Ahoy.
Hello to Tony Stark. And Dave G Sound says, they used all those clipboards, so it's also a desk.
That's true.
Oh, good point. Console
And
tops lift up, and that's where they store their lunch. Says John Rental. Okay, I better move on because I'm gonna run out of time. Because this episode is just too good. I could just uh, delay forever. And so then I'll switch back to my slides. And Spock here is saying that at the present rate of descent, we have less than 20 minutes before we enter the planet's atmosphere and burn up. Kirk finishes. So that's where the ticking clock begins for the episode. And here we get another log. Captain's log, stardate 1701.4. Ship out of control, spiraling down towards planet side 2000. We have 19 minutes of life left without engine power or helm control.
Can I
So,
mention something real quick? When
yes.
when Kirk tries to walk into the turbo shaft, the doors do not open, and he turns to her and says, "Clear that turbo shaft." And she does. She said, "Yes, sir." And next thing you know, the doors open, so she has control over that elevator.
hmm
That's a good point.
Right. So there must be like some way of clear, like maybe a speaker in there saying, "Please exit the turbo shaft or turbo lift." I don't know, but because somebody had just left, and then he tried to go out, or that may have been early, but either way, he tried to go out. He couldn't. He said, "Clear that turbo shaft," and she said, "Yes, sir." And then the door pops open.
That's fair. That's a fair point. Thank you. Then I do also acknowledge. I like how they acknowledge that it's weird that Riley was able to trick all of engineering uh, out by saying that they were needed on the bridge. And I also like that they explain that they can't get to auxiliary because Riley rerouted everything to that main engineering panel. And Mr. Scott will have to cut through the wall circuits, which will take him most of the episode to
Yeah, Riley's
accomplish.
a smart man. He can do all that.
Yeah, he is. And of course, this is the part of the convention where the guy is leaning against the engineering console, and it's time to alert his friends to take him back to his hotel room. But since he's locked himself in engineering, they'll have to wait for Scotty to break in. Uhura reports more fighting breaking out on the ship, so Spock tries to seal off the sections, and Uhura is losing control of communications. Riley realizes that Uhura is trying to cut him off, so he cuts her off from ice cream. That's rude. Then O'Reilly makes an important announcement. I keep saying O'Reilly because he said O'Reilly earlier, but his name is just O'Reilly. Okay. Attention crew, this is Captain Riley. There will be a formal dance in the bowling alley at 1900 hours tonight.
I'm just curious as to whether or not it's 10-pin or 5-pin bowling.
I know, me too. I wish we could have had the party. Well, I guess then everybody would die.
Yes.
But yeah, then there would be no party either way because the ship is careening towards the planet and is about to be destroyed.
Sorry to refer to TNG again, but how did they get this disease? Did they go to the same planet, or did they pick it up somewhere else?
Yes, well, it's the same disease. Was it a different planet?
It was a different planet, but the same magnetic disturbances on a
Gotcha.
on a planetoid that was breaking apart.
Mm-hmm.
That coincidentally had the same problem, disease or whatever.
The same
Virus.
disease developed, yes.
All right, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so it was a carbon copy, and yeah.
More writing, yes.
Normally I would say never say sorry, but definitely be sorry for that one. Then I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's fine, Jill. You're cool.
But so he finally reveals the existence of the bowling alley that we never get to see, but we know is on the ship. And then from the all the problems with the orbit and everything, we get the ship severely jolting. And we've had the ship move around before, but this is the first time I've seen it where everybody's movements and the camera movements actually make it feel like the ship is jostling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which is famously just that's on stage acting, no gimbals or anything. Everyone list to the right violently. All right.
For Lost in Space, Irwin Allen, the director, he used a bucket and a stick. He would bang left, bang right.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm just trying to see where I am in the chat for when I'm ready for that.
For sure.
And Herc 130 says the console from engineering needed to be big, then was retrofitted with a new smaller technology, kind of like the giant VCRs from our earlier youth.
That's possible.
That is possible.
That's a nice logical conclusion. And Yama says, guess Riley sang Kathleen one too many times.
I think that was it. Is the actor thought he was supposed to be funny, but I think that he didn't realize that he's supposed to be annoying.
Yep. 3D bowling. Oh.
Maybe Wii bowling. Nintendo survived to the 23rd century.
Dave G Sound says, I was serious. They had the clipboard pads in TOS. You leave space on your desk for a laptop. Same thing. Even large format studio consoles have the dead space for notes. Oh no, I took that one seriously. It was John Rendell's opening the console to store your lunch that I was laughing at.
Well, you can do that as long as it's a hot lunch. Because they've established those consoles get very hot on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Gorilla says in TNG it was a collapsing star.
Right. Being observed by the USS Tsiolkovsky, I think.
So this virus is a common thing for collapsing stars? Is that the connection?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't. Okay,
Sorry.
TNG.
Don't bother.
No. TNG was copying TOS, and that was a mistake. It was a bad.
I'm not going to argue that. That's what I've always said. TNG is 50% of TOS.
Well, TNG gets better when it stops copying TOS. And McCoy has Sulu tranquilized, and he will manufacture a cure from the tests he's running on them. and and Riley is making all sorts of crazy demands. In the future, all female crew members will wear their hair loosely about their shoulders. And Riley, I guess he just doesn't know any other songs, so he continues to sing Kathleen while Scott works on the Jeffries tube.
Well, and this is really interesting. I was paying attention to this because last week I think Pop Culture Curator, you were mentioning
Yes.
the manufacture of the Jeffries tube and how it was on wheels and moved
Yep.
around and such. And so this is, another early one, and more doodads and doohickeys show up as the show goes on.
Yes. Isn't this our first look at the Jeffries tube?
On the inside,
I
that
mean,
makes
at
sense.
all in the
Yeah,
series,
that makes sense.
right? So it's the brand new set for. Okay.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is it
That's
really?
why.
Okay, this is emergency then. I'm going to the book.
This is an emergency. We need to consult the
Red alert.
historical
Red alert.
documents.
Red
Yes.
alert.
Okay, so I'm going to read about the Jeffries tube. I think this will be about it. We'll see. We'll find out. If not, it'll be fun. Like Gene Roddenberry, Walter Matt Jeffries had flown B 17s during World War II, so they both understood the workings of flying vehicles. On the day they met, Roddenberry asked Jeffries to design a starship that was instantly recognizable but that had no flames, no fires, no rockets. Jeffries, who previously had served as a designer with Ben Casey's series art department, took the assignment very seriously. He drew dozens of designs before Roddenberry accepted the final version of the Enterprise with its saucer, lower hull, and twin nacelles. The young production designer moved on to create many of the props and sets that visually define Star Trek today, including the iconic design of the Enterprise bridge. One particular set is identified very closely with the art director, that narrow, cylindrical crawlway that allowed Scotty instant access to malfunctioning systems, equipment throughout the ship, seen in That Which Survives and numerous other episodes. The production staff jokingly referred to the cramped crawlway as a Jeffries tube, and the name stuck. Although it was never official terminology, some 2 decades later, the writing staff of Star Trek The Next Generation incorporated the name within a script, and when a crew member uttered it on air, the term Jeffries tube, at long last, was rendered canon. And there you go,
Very
that's the
cool.
book.
Thank you.
You're
Very
welcome.
cool. So this is
Yeah.
our first introduction to the Jeffries tube, right?
Correct. Yes.
Mhm.
And
Okay. And it does look empty compared to some of the later episodes. So yeah, it's like Herbert Solo said that they add more gadgets as the series progresses.
mhm. And Scotty continues working and getting the door open.
And they're very careful when they're blasting that door not to show a laser beam effect or phaser,
Hold
I
on,
should
I'm
say.
trying to. Oh, it's the end of the slides. That's why it's not working. Like, I can't do this. Okay, next slides.
Oh, this guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, right. The little short guy. He looks like he's about 18.
He does. And he has the longest glare. He is just staring at Spock.
Yeah, he stared at Spock. I noticed that too.
I was like, wow, man. You have a crush or something?
You know what? Maybe he's a fan and he got to be on the show.
You know,
I
it's
don't
funny.
know.
That's. I
I,
was thinking that would be me if I was on. I would immediately. I thought about that when I was watching this. I would be like, that would be me.
I
I
wish
would probably be staring at Spock.
I wish I had done some research on this Yeoman. Oh my goodness, or
I
whoever
don't
he
think.
is.
I don't recognize if we've seen him again or not. Looks kind of like Pat Sajak.
Ha,
Yeah,
he does.
Ensign. Who is he?
He's Lieutenant Timmy.
He's a lieutenant. He's Lieutenant Timmy.
Y-
Lieutenant Timmy.
That's what
Yeah,
I'll
you're
call
right.
him.
Lieutenant Timmy.
Well, that's one thing I
Sorry.
have got it. You notice the show definitely makes sure that nobody wears name badges.
Oh, that's true too.
hmm Yeah, I have no idea. Somebody knows somewhere. And hello in the chat to JD Lewis. He says, "Hola, all. Happy Tuesday. The Naked Time is one of my favorite episodes. Other than his uncredited first draft of The Menagerie, this was the only Star Trek teleplay by John D.F. Black. And
Oh,
Grella
very
says,
cool.
gravity rearranges molecules in the brain, not a disease. And Fractured Vision says, the reason the Enterprise is not festooned with exterior greebles is that our equipment, Jerry's reason space, is hostile, keeping the exterior smooth with the gear on the inside.
Which is one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite designs for a spaceship ever.
I
Yeah.
think he means Jeffrey's reason space.
And Yamas Queen Jess says, is it just me or does the hole they're cutting into the wall look like a reverse shape of Texas?
It does. I was
Yeah,
thinking
it
that
does.
too. Yeah,
So, okay, where am I in the...
it's similar to Texas if you remember. You
Mm-hmm.
just switch it left and right. And there's a beam.
Oh, the beam. There's your beam.
And I think that would have been added in the remastered. Because
It is
yeah,
because the phaser effect. This is definitely remastered. Yes,
I recall in the original that there was the sparking from the pattern that was to be cut out of the wall, but there was no beam at the time.
there was no beam at the time. Correct. It would have
There's no
cost them too
beam.
much. They have to pay for every second a beam is on screen, so it would have cost them too much.
But in the remaster, it's not a problem. I'm
Nope,
glad.
not an issue.
And, this man is laughing like crazy. And
That darn
great.
paintbrush. Yeah, you know how hilarious that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, so who painted this?
Right now,
Lovely.
the ship has a tagger, a 23rd century tagger.
And this isn't the only thing he tags.
But he's very hip, very 60s with his words.
Hmm. And Scotty is working quickly while being safe, but Spock tells him that they don't have time for safety. And in sickbay, McCoy is missing his report, so he goes to the lab.
Good thing
And
Sulu's not dying.
right, right. Good thing Sulu didn't stab himself with that sword.
Maybe that's the difference.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I think the difference is.
okay.
Because the other
Died.
guy stabbed him. He died from a shallow wound
Well, Sulu
from a
poked his
butter knife.
finger.
It's true. Sulu poked his finger, but Sulu didn't has a different kind of emotional state than Joe did. Joe was
That
self
is true.
doubt, and he had McCoy guessed that he'd given up,
But I
and
didn't Bowen
come
say
to,
that he had, looks like he had no will to live, right?
yeah. And Sulu very much has a will to save the queen at this point.
Right.
So
And he's not done with her yet, folks.
and but you can hear in Chapel's voice that she is getting more afflicted by the illness.
Mm-hmm. Slowing down and being a little bit more coy in her cadence.
Yeah. And on the bridge is a powerful moment where the tensions get a little bit high and the illness is spreading. And I don't know if Uhura is afflicted by it at all, but Kirk has an outburst against her.
I
Um,
don't think she is. I didn't get that she was having it. I think he's the
no,
one that he
yeah, he's the
overreacted.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one who's afflicted, and but she calms him down, and she says that she will try.
And he
Uh,
recomposes himself.
yes, he does, and it's a good moment of Kirk stabilizing himself, just as the crew has stabilized the orbit.
Right.
So, the I mean, they didn't stabilize it enough. The ship is still spiraling down, but it's a good parallel there.
Remember, at this point, Kirk has not been affected by the virus yet.
But he has been in contact with it when he was didn't
Wrestling
he
with
touch?
Sulu.
That's what I thought too. But apparently, they make it look like he doesn't get it until he touches Spock. But I could be wrong.
You could be right as well. It's not explicitly stated in the episode, so both
Or
cases could be possible.
right, and they don't exactly explain why it seems to affect some people quicker than others.
Mhm. Yeah, and so I'm actually able to always separate Nurse Chapel from Loxana in Major Barrett's performance. But when she grabs Spock's hand, directly transferring the illness to him, and says, Vulcan men treat their women strangely. I kind of see hints of Loxana here when she says, I don't know why, but I love you. And she has the same closeness and feelings, without being creepy about it, like Riley was. And even even though it's raw emotion, she does it with grace, and though completely out of control, unbefitting of a Starfleet officer, it is of course admissible because of this illness. It is a chilling confession of her love for Spock, and he has
And this is where it's like it affects him immediately.
it affects him almost instantly. He he is sorry. All he can say is I'm sorry.
Yeah, first it's like confusion. I think he
Yes.
looks like he's confused, and then it starts kicking in.
Yes, Spock gives it back in earnest, as much as a Vulcan can, who is struggling to keep it together, that he really is sorry, that he can't or won't reciprocate that love. And the passion is unavoidable for Chapel here, and I'm so happy that Major had a chance to have such a great performance.
I'm sure she was too.
Hmm.
And this will be a long running, sort of recurring character trait for Christine throughout the show.
By the way, I wanted to mention, but I could be wrong. I'm going to look more into it, but I think at this point, Gene Roddenberry was still married to his original wife.
Okay. It's
Right.
true. He does marry her, and she's with him through to the end.
Yeah. Well, but he hasn't married. Uh, what's her name? Nurse Chapel. What's her name again?
Majel Barrett.
Majel Barrett. He hasn't married her yet at this point
Major
because,
Barrett, yes.
right, I have the Star Trek bloopers, and in one of the scenes, they're doing a birthday party for a Mrs. Roddenberry. So I'm saying that Gene was still married. Remember, that's how Gene ended up with a divorce, is because he was cheating on his wife with Majel Barrett. Sorry.
Hmm. It's true.
Yeah,
He was quite
infidelity.
the Lothario.
Yeah.
He loved mankind.
Yes, that
He
is
was
one way to
willing to
put it.
boldly. He was willing to boldly go, especially in court, apparently.
No, baby, it's not you. It's just that I have so much love to give.
So, I mean, this is a great scene.
Hmm.
Love it so much. And I guess I took a lot more screenshots than I should have of it.
That's fine.
But you do get to see how quickly, like you said, the illness, the pathogen makes it to Spock's system.
Hmm.
It begins to break him down, and they finally make it through Riley's defenses here, and they get through the door.
And he doesn't put up much of a fight, of course.
No, he's just like,
Right.
no dance tonight.
He's happy. Yeah.
Kind of just like a kid who's been caught with their video game when
Yes.
they're supposed to be asleep.
And he is taken away, never to be seen again until the conscience of the king.
Oh yeah, he comes back.
Oh yeah, he's definitely a recurring character.
But oh, Spock, the shame he must be feeling here and breaking down completely
In public, yes.
in public. So he goes to a room to
This was the
continue to
mic
break
shop. Yeah.
down.
Well, and
And
if I don't have any reference for it, but from what I remember reading ages ago, is this was the last scene of shooting on a Friday. They were about to wrap production, and Leonard Nimoy wanted to more closely explore what was going on in terms of the breakdown of his Vulcan discipline and his human side. And this was largely improvised, or at least improvised on set, probably worked out with script, but it was one long take. And as mentioned by Fractured Vision in the chat, and what a powerful performance it is.
incredibly so. It was so powerful when I watched this that I didn't even really take notes on it because I was too busy watching it.
Well, once again, it shows the actor really putting himself into the character, and I appreciate that. I think it's sorely lacking these days.
Yes. Yes. Well, whenever he was on set, he stayed in character. Mm, mm,
Yeah, he said at conventions that his family, he'd come home to his wife and kids, and they'd say, "Dad, what are you doing? Wake up!" Pretty much snap out of it because he
yeah.
wouldn't laugh. He said he would hear things that were funny, and he wouldn't laugh, and he had to kind of snap
He,
himself out of it. He was
yeah.
so much,
He somehow brought Spock home. He didn't mean
yeah,
to.
no, not intentional.
And he begins to think of math to hold it together, not for the last time, but he's not succeeding here.
And I thought that was an interesting character choice, using the math to try and center himself again and bring him back to his steely resolve.
Right, I think he's thinking logic.
Hmm.
By the way, everybody, I'm sure everybody knows this, but those stripes in the walls, the reason why they're there is because all those walls break apart and are moved around so they can be reassembled for a different room.
Cool. And so they finally make it into engineering and find out that Riley's turned off the engines and that it will take 30 minutes to regenerate them, but they only have 8 minutes, according to um,
The
according to
decaying
her
orbit.
according
Yeah,
to Uhura's reading of the orbital plot.
yes, the decaying orbit, yes.
And we get another captain's log supplemental. The Enterprise spiraling down out of control. Ship's outer skin heating rapidly due to friction with the planet's atmosphere. And, and I didn't get any clips for this episode, but I already had this clip on standby. And they have this exchange um, about
About
what did he
restarting the
say?
engines?
Yeah, about restarting the engine.
Scotty, I can't change the laws of physics.
Until he does.
Yeah, yeah, right. Because he thinks he needs that 30 minutes to get things going.
Well,
But
remember, it's Spock's calculations that allows him to do it. So
yes,
he
right,
honestly doesn't know at this point.
right. Scotty doesn't know how to do this.
Right.
He would need computers for a couple of weeks to be working to figure this out.
Yes.
And um, Scott says, Captain, you can't mix matter and antimatter cold. We'd go up in the biggest explosion. And Kirk says, we can balance out our engines into a controlled implosion. But Scott says that's only a theory. That's never been done. That, as far as Scott knows, apparently Spock has all the information about it, which we'll see later. And since, okay, wait.
Mhm.
Oh, and I guess Dr. McCoy's just given Sulu a shot.
This is
The hypo.
hilarious because, right, he screams in pain and immediately he's like, well, what? Where am I?
But I thought the hypo spray wasn't supposed to hurt.
It wasn't. It was him awakening him. But he's the only one that reacts this way to the shot.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a shot that he caused the pain. I thought it was him, like, awakening and realizing. I could be wrong. I don't know.
I think that's a fair interpretation.
I like that because I couldn't figure it out myself because I know hypo sprays aren't supposed to be painful. And McCoy figures out how to generate a serum to cure the crew of the illness, having tested Sulu. He says, that's how we missed it. It passed from man to man through perspiration. Once in the bloodstream, it acts like alcohol, depresses the centers of judgment and self-control. Now get someone to the lab, tell them the serum works, and start preparing more.
Yeah, I think that's the part the TNG writers read. Oh, it's like alcohol. Okay, that's all we need to know.
Yes,
And
I
this
think
is
you're
funny
right.
because Bones is saying he's talking to the lab, saying we need this, and they're just laughing at him.
Yeah. And Mr. Scott announces emergency restart of the engines while Kirk finds Spock so he could get help from him regarding this issue getting the formula to mix the matter and antimatter into a controlled implosion. And implosions, of course, concentrate matter and energy inward instead of outward like an explosion. And Spock would have the control, except that he's got more to deal with than anyone. Vulcans have the strongest emotions of all, which is why they've chosen to suppress them. So he's having regrets for not expressing love for his mother, and Captain Kirk, just basically also afflicted with the illness, also has to he has to slap him
Yeah. Snap out of it.
because this ship only has 4 minutes, no matter how dire the situation. Because Spock is still self-retrospective now about his father, first about his mother, then his father, then Kirk's friendship itself. And then this is that part where he addresses the friendship.
And he's had enough of the slapping. You know.
Right. And he's now listening. And Kirk says, "We've got to risk implosion. It's our only chance." And Spock says, "It's never been done." And Kirk says, "Don't tell me that again, science officer. It's a theory. It's possible. We may go up into the biggest ball of fire since the last sun, and these parts exploded, but we've got to take that 1 in 10,000 chance." And then this is the point, after this contact, this direct contact, this Kirk loses it. We don't know. I think that he was already afflicted a bit, but now he's just completely gone. He says, "I've got the disease, love. You're better off without it. And I'm better off without mine. This vessel I give, she takes. She won't permit me my life. I've got to live hers." And of course, Shatner, of course, delivers that way better, but I don't want to deal with CBS today.
Fair enough.
And Kirk loses it. This somehow, because Spock hasn't been cured yet, this somehow steals Spock and being able to help the ship out with the formula. He says, "It's never been tested. It's a theoretical relationship between time and antimatter." And Spock somehow remembered this intermixed formula that he learned somewhere. I don't know how Spock knows this formula, but he knows it. He's a science officer. He knows stuff. And Kirk continues to pine that he can't be with his yeoman. But, I mean, of course he's able to be with a lot of other women throughout the series. But I guess Yeoman Rand is the one that he wants to walk with on the beach. And seeing Kirk this way helps Spock control himself enough to communicate the formula to the bridge. And
Well, and I really enjoy the performance here as well, because there's still self-doubt and affliction from the infection, but Spock is again sort of redoubling his efforts to control himself.
I think they're showing, he's got more power over this virus than the rest of the crew. He's forcing himself to come out of it.
Yes, and not only that, I think it's his love for the ship that keeps him focused more than anything.
Yes.
Because even he won't get distracted because his distraction is the ship. And this last part of the episode is about handling extreme emotion, and I love this episode so much that I have to just spill right into my rating of it already.
Oh wow!
I don't even care. I give this episode an A+. And this episode is all about the extreme emotions and how letting them out of control would risk the lives of everybody on the ship, and displays the importance of the discipline that Starfleet officers must have in the field.
I second that, third, fourth, and fifth. That's what I kept bringing up during the Orville.
Mm-hmm. And I've actually heard some people who don't fancy Star Trek complain about the display of stoic duty that they see in Star Trek as a detriment.
They want the talking in hallways and feelings in hallways and all that.
As being stiff, as being stiff and unreal. But this is proof right here why it's such serious professionalism is vital.
That's how you know you're talking to somebody who watches TV and has never been in the military or real life.
Yes, this is proof right here why it's so serious to the safety of everyone and why I love Star Trek so much. And it also brings up one of my biggest regrets, not really talking to my grandfather, knowing he loved Star Trek, but not really talking to him about it. And
Oh,
I
that was before
imagine,
you realized, before you were
uh,
younger.
yeah, when I was younger,
Uh,
and I imagined that this was it. Uh, so I just have my imagination to help me out here because he was in Vietnam and he knew better than anyone the importance of staying focused, not letting your emotions fly off the handle, or else you will die. And the Enterprise would be done if Kirk hadn't been there for Spock in that moment. And seeing Kirk transition to the loss of control and seeing and what steeled Spock for what he had to do to give that formula to intermix the matter and the antimatter. And even here with Kirk and Spock struggling to keep it together, they fight through it and they get it done. And I love this episode like Kirk loves the ship. He says, "I'll never lose you. Never." And so he heads to the bridge. And I don't have notes for the rest of this.
Well, and as Kirk arrives back on the bridge, Bones is there for some reason and tears his shirt.
well, well, he tears his shirt so he can give him the injection. But my question is, for the new effects, it looks like they're going to crash headfirst into the planet. For example, I'm trying to describe what the effect looks like on their view screen, but it looks like they're zooming over the planet very quickly. But if I remember right, in the original effects, they were spiraling into the planet. And Kirk says spiral. Somewhere in the episode, they did mention
You're
spiral.
right, they're supposed to be spiraling.
So yeah, the effects are wrong
Mhm.
on that. Yeah.
I
Anyway,
think it's
sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's just the orientation of the ship, whether it's I
No, the effect is completely different. It was a spiraling effect in the original episode. Jill, when you get a chance, try to look at the original effects on this episode and see. But I think it's more of a spiraling there, like an arrow heading towards the ground and it's turning as it's heading towards the ground. Kind of look like that.
You're right. Um, you're probably right. I don't know. I'd have to see the original, like you said. So that's some research to do. Thank you for bringing that
Well,
up.
yeah, because this is the first time I've seen this episode with the new effects. I was like, immediately I noticed that's not right.
Yeah, and that's the main science of the episode is, getting stuck in the orbit and being pulled in by the gravity of the planet. That's disintegrating because of the loss of the star. And so getting those kind of things right is an interesting thing to investigate. So thank you. And Kirk here is still uh, pining for the yeoman he cannot have. No
She's like,
beach.
what? She's like, what? Don't go to this again.
She doesn't even know.
No, she doesn't. But she's like that look on his face. It's like, no, don't do it. No, we've already been through this.
Yeah. No beach to walk on. And then we get those probably the strangest part of this episode is, well, I guess Spock did reference to it when he said that the intermixed mixture was a correlation between antimatter and time. But this is probably the strangest because of the apparent time travel stuck at the end of this episode. And don't know
Well,
if
I
it.
was gonna say Spock has pretty much completely regained his senses without a shot. Is that right?
I assume that he got shot somehow, but like I said,
Well,
the
what about this?
interaction with Kirk.
What about this?
Yeah,
Because we saw the virus affect him quicker. Maybe it goes through his system and out it faster. So maybe.
possibly. So it went through his pores. You're saying he already sweated it all out
Oh,
when
right, like your body would go through a cold. So maybe the reason why he was affected quicker is because it goes through his system faster, which means it wore off, possibly.
that is a good guess. I do wish that we would have seen him get injected with the hypo spray.
Yeah.
But then we do get this time travel at the end of the episode. It is a little strange when this episode was absolutely perfect, and then apparently this intermix mixture between the antimatter caused a time warp. And so we get an effect similar to the first episode.
With sort of the overlay of the time
ti-
warp.
montage, yeah, kind of. This is definitely a new effect.
It feels new.
But yeah,
Feels
that did
very
not
new.
look like the original episode.
And so once Zulu reverses power and the time warp is gone. And so then instead of the time going backwards, it finally goes back forwards. And they find that there was I don't know if it was time travel or if it was a rewind of time of 71 hours. And
But
I'm not sure what the difference would be.
you know that what we're looking at right here is completely new, right? For the new updates, because the
Mhm.
clock, everything looked completely different in the original series.
Yes, and this was a good addition. I like seeing the time go backwards.
Oh, it
And
did,
then
but it was older
the
rotating
chronometer.
numbers. Yeah, the chronometer were older rotating numbers, like the old they call them digital, but old clocks used to have. It's hard to explain it, but each digit was like a roller behind the lens, and it would
I
just turn.
understand. I've seen Groundhog Day.
Ha, kind of like that, but not quite.
Okay.
Similar, yeah, just before that, right? Go ahead, Jill. Sorry.
So no, you don't have to say you're sorry at every punctuation. I
Well, when
love
you're talking,
everything.
right?
I love
The one,
everything you're saying, even if I
yeah,
say something different next.
no, that's okay. Because I know the clock you're talking about on Groundhog Day, where they're like little pieces of metal, and it would turn and it would flip over.
Mhm. And so they say we have 3 days to live over again. And Spock announces it as a potential method of time travel. If one month, I mean, but yeah, I guess if you want to risk the destruction of the ship every time. But it is a little bit of a strange way to end an absolutely perfect episode. But I allow it since not much time is spent on it. And time. Well, we'll cross the other times that Star Trek deals with time when we get to it.
Well, and it'll be interesting when we deal with Captain Christopher in the upcoming episode. I forget the name of it. Tomorrow is yesterday.
Captain Christopher. Yeah, tomorrow's yesterday. That's right. I love that one. Or is it yesterday's Enterprise?
No, yesterday's Enterprise
No,
is
tomorrow is
next
yesterday.
generation. Yeah,
Oh,
tomorrow is yesterday.
Yeah, and that,
tomorrow's yesterday.
yeah, and that has a whole slew of new effects.
Looking
Uh,
forward to that one.
mhm. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, excellent character study for
Tomorrow's
everyone,
yesterday. Somebody in the
everyone on the
chat will
show.
tell me. Okay. So yeah, speaking of the chat has been very amazing here, and
Yes.
yeah, special. This was a great episode. What were you saying, Scotty?
Oh, I was just saying how I did. It's been a long time. This is one of the episodes that I sort of overlook when I'm sort of flipping through Netflix or pulling out discs to watch episodes. It's been a long time since I've seen this one front to back. Really enjoyed it just for the character development. Although everyone is really tense, you can really feel the urgency of the emergency that's happening as they spiral down. I also really enjoy that this is when Scotty comes back to Next Generation in Relics at the end of the sort of denouement of that episode. Scotty is recounting his tales on the Enterprise, and this is the one specifically that he tells Geordi about. And it is such a great linchpin. Although the end is kind of like, and time warp. Okay, we can travel through
Yeah.
time now.
Yeah, I was kind of just smashed on the end there and just like, okay, that's a thing now.
But for everything that I love about it, I'm gonna go with a B plus.
Okay, okay.
I know it's not the A plus that you gave it, but
I think A plus, yeah.
I yeah, I don't I maybe I'm being a little too critical, but I don't yeah, it's a good episode. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but I did like it for the sort of emotional rawness that you get to see in people that you've met as being stoic or committed professionals aboard this ship doing their job. If this was an episode of anything new, this would just be a regular episode and everyone would be acting normally because crying is normal.
Right. And that's what makes Star Trek special is how they pull themselves together to take the very dangerous tasks that they are doing every day very seriously. And yeah, Miss Queen Jess says, guess Riley's song Kathleen. Just Riley sang Kathleen one too many times. That's not where I was. Where was I? Let's see where it was. Right here.
There we go.
And I read that one. Also, what rating do you give this episode, Pop Culture Curator? Since we've got both of ours down, I threw mine right in the middle of the end of
Well,
the
first
episode.
I'm going to say why the acting between Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner I thought was top notch.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, one of my favorite things is the fact that a lot of what's usually the bit characters got a lot more. They got to shine a little bit more in this episode, which I enjoy. And for those
Me
reasons, I give
too.
it an A+ because there's some episodes where we don't get to see the background characters much at all. So
Yeah, even really
anytime,
great episodes, we don't get
right,
to see them.
right. So anytime they can flesh out their roles like this and get a few more lines, I really appreciate it. It's like seeing more of the family. Thank you, Jill.
Agreed. I agree completely. Wow, I think this is the first time we've had the same score. That's pretty cool. And JD Lewis says John Bella as laughing crewman. Yes. And Herc 130 says they might not wear name tags, but I bet their names are written on the elastic band of their undies with Sharpie markers.
Totally makes sense. I'm up for that.
Right? Yamas Queen Jess says, I'm in love with you, Mr. Spock. You, the human, Mr. Spock. The Vulcan, Mr. Spock. Me too. Fractured Vision says, notice Leonard's breakdown scene is one long shot. And yes, we did. Yamas Queen Jess says, Spock is the sexiest member of the crew, and apparently Vulcans are more susceptible to the virus. Agreed completely, Yamas
That's
Queen
what
Jess.
I'm thinking. Yeah.
And all accounts of that comment. And hello in the chat to Captain Infinity.
Hello, Captain.
JD Lewis says, kudos to Mark Daniels, who was a last-minute replacement for the unknown original director. He makes sense out of all the chaos, storm, and stress in this episode. He does. He does a great
Absolutely.
job.
Really builds the tension and tone of the episode, too.
Fractured Vision says, needless injections became a thing in the 70s and ended more or less during the 80s when they found unexpected problems with rare infections.
Well, there was a time where they did introduce injections that were similar to like what McCoy uses. They didn't use needles; they used a pressure to force injection into the skin, and they were very painful. I had a few of them when I was in the military,
Oh, wow.
but yeah, they've gotten rid of them. They were very cruel. I guess you could say they were designed to be painless, but they weren't. They hurt more than an actual needle.
Okay. Wow.
And then they did make a sound.
Mm-hmm. And Captain Infinity says, is it Star Trek lore that Vulcans suppress rather than control their emotions? It's
I think
controversial.
it's both, isn't it?
Yeah, they do both. Yeah, they definitely do both because they have absolutely incredibly strong emotions that they suppress and control. And Captain Infinity says, stoic control of emotions is good. Suppression of emotions is a storehouse of trouble for later. Well, okay. Well, trying to determine the difference between that. Well, he has the emotions, but he controls them. But is he suppressing them? I don't know. I think it's control, not suppression. Then, if it's if it's a dichotomy of answers, I will say that he controls his emotions, not suppresses.
Well, and the exploration of the Vulcan control of emotions is sort of addressed with each character, obviously built upon what Leonard Nimoy did. But yeah.
Thank you for drawing that distinction. Mega Copper says the Joan Collins episode is going to be epic. Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for the city on the edge of forever. And Dave G Sound's got to go. See you later, Dave G Sound. The wife's home from work. Thanks for being on.
Take care, JG.
See you later.
And Mega Cropper says Kirk could be out of character to accommodate her.
I think it's a theme that Gene Roddenberry sort of played with, even from Captain Pike as well, just in terms of the loneliness of command. They address it somewhat in terms of the enemy within, where it's like you're the captain, you can't be seen to be anything less than perfect. And so that sort of distance that he has between himself and the crew, except for a select few, obviously with Spock and Bones, I think it is something that would be sort of revealed to Jim's character in terms of feeling that isolation. And it's a nice touch. Not only with Spock repressing his emotions, obviously as a Vulcan, but with Captain Kirk not necessarily pursuing his base desires. You know, if you wanted a family and stuff like that, then going into Starship Command wouldn't necessarily be the best way to go, especially at this time. You could have a family in the 24th century on your command, but not in the 23rd.
Yes, he set it off perfectly. Very good. J.D. Lewis says, I guess the hypospray wasn't fully established yet because McCoy tears Kirk's shirt off to give Kirk the shot, which he never does ever again.
Yes, afterwards he right through the clothing.
And Mega Cropper says, catch you later on the morning brew, Dave. So
Cheers.
the morning brew, cool. And I think that's a reference to Captain Fandom Nerds, or is it Jedi Bill? I don't know. I think it's Captain Fandom Nerds.
You said Dave.
Show. Well, Dave will be at that show.
Okay.
J.D. Lewis says maybe Spock is just that good. Spock is always just that good.
It's a true story.
Yeah, and I think the reason why the spray where they changed that was because of the cost of the costume. So maybe that's why no more ripping of shirts.
Or maybe it was one of those classic situations where it's like, well, if George Takei got to take off his shirt, I want to show off my bicep.
You know what? That could have happened. I could see that happening. And Mayor McCheese reminds people to share this stream. That would be pretty neat. And Mega Cropper continues, the blonde is my favorite character, so you really like Yamin Rand? What happened to her? More important than Alexander, in my opinion.
Drugs and alcohol, sadly.
Well, maybe you'll have the production notes ready for her last episode.
Well, I read her autobiography.
Oh, you did? Okay,
yeah,
well, we'll save
met her
it for that.
Well, I have to get it out of storage, but when I met her at a convention, she was selling her book, and I bought it. And I also met her in Fresno, California, but she talked about her addictions and getting over that. She did overcome all that, but it did ruin her role on Star Trek, unfortunately.
That is very unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I knew about it, but
there were also allegations of impropriety from one of the producers as well that sort of led to that.
Yeah, I was saying, and she got kind of caught up in the Hollywood ringer, which was sad because she was naive and wasn't expecting a lot of what was going on.
Right.
So it wasn't her fault at all.
No, and we'll learn more about that story in a future broadcast.
Yes. Always more to learn.
Right. And Tony Stark says he's on his way to work, sending all the love and support. Loved this episode. I love this episode too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Tony Stark.
Thanks, Tony.
You're great.
Cheers. Yay. Sorry, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor McCheese.
Mayor McCheese said, yay. J.D. Lewis says, originally, tomorrow is yesterday. Tomorrow is yesterday. I knew tomorrow was in there somewhere. Was meant to be a direct follow-up to The Naked Time, and the time warp was intended to be a connecting cliffhanger.
I had heard something about that, but I didn't have any facts to back it up. So, thank you for raising that point.
Tomorrow's yesterday. Oh, it was yesterday that I knew that was in the title. Yeah. And of course, Mayor McCheese always reminds us to subscribe to Doomcock. usually anyone who's listening to this knows about Doomcock. But if you don't, what are you doing with your life? Go subscribe to Doomcock. It's great. And Mega Cropper says, Mega Cropper might not be a fan of Doomcock, but that's all right. Or dark journalists. Okay. That's exactly what Doomcock does, but okay. And Captain Infinity says the difference is black and white, at least according to modern psychology. Okay. So he's referring to his differentiating between the suppression of the emotions versus just the control of the emotions, and that's a very good distinction to make. And Fractured Vision says Enterprise Vulcans were pissy, whiny autocrats, said Fractured Vision.
Which is directly dealt with when they introduced T'Pau in the two-part episode, The Forge, in Enterprise. And they discuss sort of reacquiring the discipline and philosophy of Surak, which had been sort of passed by the wayside by the time you get to the 22nd century in Enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Gamma's Queen just says Spock doesn't need a human sibling.
Who's
Or
that?
or half brother.
I'm okay with the half-brother. I like Cybok.
And we're winding down to the end of this live stream, and only now does the Stream Element Spot think it's a good time to start working.
Yeah, now it's time to wake up, Brad. Just as the party's over and everyone's going home.
Welcome, bot.
Tony, okay,
Right on time. That timing is impeccable.
great. Because I'm completely done. We're done with the chat. The chat's been amazing. Thank you everybody for being here today. I'd shout everybody out, but I gotta get going and go do stuff. But
Thank
I
you,
thank
Jill.
you. I did read the comments, so.
But yes, you did a better job than I do. I need to start doing the same on my
And,
streams. I
well,
promise I will.
It is a tough balance to keep a show going and also engage with the chat. And so it's an ongoing thing.
I know it, and
learn.
I'm gonna start doing it as well.
And JD Lewis says, "Great show today. Goodbye, friends. See you next time." Yes, see you guys next time. See you later,
Take care,
Captain
everybody.
Infinity and Fractured Vision, everybody.
Love you guys.
Mega
Yeah,
Chopper,
thank you so much.
Yamas, Queen Jess, and Son of a Red Shirt. Oh yeah, and Bird Prey 5 was here too. And make sure to check out his channel. He usually streams directly after my stream, so he might be doing something today. He might be doing some kind of call-in or poker or something on Tuesday. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
And thanks, Dalek. Thanks, Edge of Time.
Yes,
Thanks
you.
to everyone.
Thank you, the Edge
Mr.
Time.
Brown.
Oh yeah, Mr. Brown Alliance is here. Always so cool to see him. He's got a
LDG.
wonderful, wonderful channel. And LDG too.
So fun.
And-
What a great community. Thanks for coming and hanging out and playing Star Trek.
And a really great panel too. Thank you for talking to me about Star Trek every week.
And check out my channel, you guys, if you like Star Trek, the animated series on Mondays. Jill and I get together and review that. Thank you.
Yes, and the next one is going to be the magic, some kind of magic of Tasau or something. It's going to be neat. It's got like the
Megas
devil
2?
in it. It looks like it has the devil in it. I don't remember.
Yes.
I need to
Can't
watch it. And Scotty, would you like to tell us about your channel before we head out?
Yeah, if you guys are interested in the films of Quentin Tarantino, we've covered a bunch of them so far. We did Kill Bill Volume 1 last week, and it was my friend Kat and Black Phillip Alvarez was there, and we talked about it. Tomorrow we're going to wrap up the Kill Bill saga with Volume 2, and a very special announcement. Next Wednesday, October 5th, we're going to be celebrating the anniversary of James Bond, as we've covered all of the James Bond movies and big fans, and we're just going to discuss the entire franchise on the anniversary of the debut of Dr. No.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And as Yamas Queen Jess says, live long and prosper.
Yep.
I'll see you guys all next time. I'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
Goodbye. And I'll leave you with the preview for the next episode.
Captain's log, stardate 1533.7. We have taken aboard an unusual passenger, the sole survivor of a transport crash 14 years ago.
Are you a girl? Oh, Charlie's our new darling, our darling, our darling. Charlie's our new darling. We know not what he'll do.
She could love me.
She's not the girl, Charlie.
But if I did what you said, if I was gentle.
Charlie, there are a million things in this universe you can have, and there are a million things you can't have. That's the way things are.
Look, I'm off duty at 1400. Why don't you join me in Recreation Room 6, Deck 3?
You got a deal, friend.
You responsible for what happened to the Antares?
Why?
Answer me.
Well, they weren't nice to me.
What about us, Charlie?